I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Yeah, everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Hey, welcome to HoopSpeak Live. Happy New Year edition. I'm Becckley Mason. With me is my co-host, Ethan Sherwood-Strauss. You can tweet us at the hashtag HoopSpeakLive. Email us, hoopspeaklive.com. Questions, things you want to talk about on the show. Today's episode is brought to you by the cold sore on the military dude that Jenny McCarthy kissed at midnight. Which was like, how they didn't fact check that guy's face before they put him on was something special, but I'm sure nothing too new for her.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't want to assume, I don't want to assume that a woman who offers herself up to have an intimate moment with a stranger has a history, Becckley, and I think that's unfair, what you just did right there.
Detailed. It's on camera. Have you ever seen Singled Out?
Oh, yeah, I did see Singled Out, and I had a lot of memories of Singled Out as we date ourselves right now last night, because that was the apogee for McCarthy, in my opinion. That's when she was a rocketing superstar, and now it's just sad to see what's become of her.
It really is. I mean, it's also sort of amazing that even this has become of her career, though. You looked for a while like basketball was going to be the apex, and here she is hosting with, Ryan Seacrest on basically the most watched show on New Year's Eve. It's sort of important, or impressive anyway.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking last night, was that it was kind of sad, but at the same time, what else does McCarthy have, and how scared is she about losing her job? It's to the point where one of the producers said, you got to kiss a random dude, and she doesn't really have a recourse. Like, what is she going to do? Join her successful pop band when she's done,
Completely different person. She just, like, they're forcing her. They won't pay her otherwise. It's in your contract.
Yeah, we essentially saw a more PG version of the last scene, or one of the last scenes of Requiem for a Dream last night in the New Year's Eve party. And, it made me a little uncomfortable, and I suppose this is a great job for McCarthy. But it's funny to me when these New Year's Eve figures are there and they just don't really have any other options other than being that ultra-hyped presenter. And I like the Gangnam Style guy, too. That guy was cool. I wanted to hang out with that guy. I felt very happy whenever he was on my screen.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty amazing that he was even there. Even more amazing that was MC Hammer next to him, right?
I was trying to figure that out, I don't exactly know. Maybe Marcus can help us because he grew up in the East Bay area, and he perhaps will recognize. I'm also calling you old subtly, Marcus. I don't know if you can hear me, but maybe he can recognize whether or not it's Hammer. We can see about that. I wasn't sure. I don't know. I don't know if I'd recognize MC Hammer if he was walking down the street.
Yeah, I'm sure I wouldn't, unless he had the pants on. Then you might look twice. All right, let's actually speak about hoops live. It's what? It's January, which is the old Roman who looked forward and backwards. So let's do that on the show today. First, we'll start with a look back. My look back at 2012 is centered around the fact that there was a 66-game season, which is historically unprecedented and may never happen again. And I think when you get in the kind of grind of the season, and it is close to 82 games, but there's never been one of those. Who knows how long lockouts will last in the future? And it's just sort of a weird footnote to everything that happened. It's not an asterisk at all. But imagine if, say, LeBron James only wins one title and it's in the lockout year. Do you think that will be something that is? I mean, it can't not be something that's factored into the narrative of his career.
Well, it's funny because we already know the season's too long, so even if it was factored in, I believe it would be unfair. I loved when he was asked about that in the finals after the winning the championship. Somebody asked him about whether or not it would matter less, and he cursed. It wasn't an angry curse. It was more of an exasperated one where like, shit, cut it off. I don't care if it was blank game season. The playoffs are long, and that's true. So I think it would be unfair. Looking back on what just happened, whatever went down with the Nets is going to come into play, in my opinion, because it seems like they might have just destroyed what could have been a very good situation. And well, you don't know if they'd get the number 7 pick or whatever, or 6 pick, whatever pick Lillard was. It is funny that they just gave Darren Williams a max contract, and they gave Gerald Wallace a big contract in order to lure Williams, and you would probably just be better off with having Lillard on a rookie deal, not spending any of that money.
Yeah, the Nets are a really, really weird franchise because I don't think there's ever been an expansion that wanted to be a big city power so quickly. I mean, most expansions are to places like Memphis, New Orleans, Oklahoma City, whereas this is an expansion into the most populous borough in New York. And so they want to act like the Lakers and the Knicks, but they really have no idea, it seems to me, kind of how to... They kind of want to have it both ways, right? They want to have like the fun of being new and the novelty, but they also try to, like, their uniforms are this old school thing. They're like, oh no, we have tradition. We've meant to be here. You just didn't realize that we were kind of a part of this community all along. And it makes for some weird basketball decisions.
Yeah. And what a tweet that will forever live in infamy as so long as we're looking back is Jay-Z's "The city's under new management" after the Nets beat the Knicks. That might linger for a while in some memories. Looking back at some maybe more poignant moments, or at least one of them, I was most staggered by, and I wrote about it a little bit, the hug between Kevin McHale and Kevin Garnett at the end of the Rockets beating the Celtics when Kevin McHale just recently come back from his daughter passing away, was just one of the most fascinating, just moving NBA scenarios I've ever seen, because they were sharing this private exchange, and McHale was just breaking down crying, and you remembered that McHale drafted him and has known Garnett since he was a teenager, and now Garnett's an adult, and he's almost comforting McHale as he's somewhat broken and in public. And that was just, in my opinion, at least the most loaded moment of the year. I don't know if we can necessarily call it a happy one, but it was certainly a moving one.
Yeah, and I think it was a really interesting moment for KG, who's got a lot of crap for stuff that he does non-basketball on the court. But to me, that the fascinating thing about him has always been his ability to tap into like very passionate emotions for basketball and for his life. I think that a lot of people go through their lives, and I would count myself among them, who have trouble just like being super emotive, and certainly even in private, but like in public, in front of all these people, KG was doing that. The way he plays with his heart, like really out there. It's a cliche, but it's just, I think, one of the underrated things about sports, and certainly in the NBA, is how intimate it is with the players, and how you can see and gain that from, a sideline shot. He's not wearing a helmet. He's the same size as the coach. I think there's a closeness and humanness to the NBA that moment really could only happen in the NBA in some ways.
Yeah, I was just thinking about KG and how it's almost as though he views genuineness as the most important thing. And after losing to the Warriors, he said to the reporter from CSN that this is where the plastic people melt. This is where all the plastic people melt, which I love. And he said the lights are bright. This is where all the plastic people melt. So so there's almost a strength that KG is seeing derived from how genuine he feels, that these fake people, these people who don't have emotions out there, these guarded people, are going to falter, whereas I'm going to persevere because I'm channeling this into my craft. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and maybe this is like classic like stuff that gets made fun of on Twitter, but in those Boston-Cleveland series before LeBron broke through against them, sometimes it felt like LeBron wasn't willing to go to match KG's and by extension, the Celtics' level of emotion and depth until at a certain point, he was able to access that and add it to his game. And that's kind of part of why he's so amazing in big moments, and he just takes over games at will now. It's like he has this thing that now, it took him, he had to be pushed to get there, but now he can access it when he needs to and come up with those plays that take your whole kind of consciousness and effort and, your whole body and mind and soul to achieve.
Yeah, it's like when I access my undying want and will to complain in the right moments and scenarios. When I dig into that, I have a reserve of this. I'm like Iran or Saudi Arabia with oil. I just have a reserve of this that others can't match. And in big moments, it's very important. Speaking of smart alecky types, and speaking of earlier the Warriors, as I do my professional segue, we do have the best Warriors beat guy in the business. Well, at least one of them. Him and Rusty are both great. And Marcus Thompson, who's coming to join us and talking about this surreally good team this year.
First off, there's like,
hey, Marcus,
3 beat writers. Not that great of a beat.
He puts you in a class of your own.
Homegrown beat writer of all time. I mean, really?
Look, I think that's a big thing. I think that's more competitive. There are only so many beat reporters in the business right now. Look, I'm just gonna get myself screwed up. I'm gonna turn it on you and just say that I see you wearing the Oakland hat right now, and I've seen you come into Oracle multiple occasions with the New York Yankees cap, and I just don't know how that works. And I just think that people should know that you are being a traitor on occasion.
Man, it's fashion over fanship. So if I need a blue hat, I gotta wear the Yankees. You can't wear green and gold with everything. So the A's have my heart. Anybody who knows me knows that. So, the only thing I just can't wear really is the Giants cap, San Francisco Giants. I just can't do that. That's too much kind of split cap from back in the day. Nah, I can't roll with that. The Yankees, I can get down with Yankees.
Okay, well, I don't know if I buy that explanation, but it is, in fact, an explanation. I wanted to ask something that I've never asked you before, because usually when I see you, I feel like we're just trying to make the best joke possible about the surroundings. But I've always thought about how I've always thought, and I'm just going to jump right into it. Mark Jackson is a man of faith, and he's very religious, and religion is also important to you, as you mentioned in your really great piece on the Warriors potentially moving to San Francisco. And I just always wondered, do you guys ever talk about that, or is that just never a topic when you're interviewing him and when you're talking to him, off record?
We have conversations about it. Me, Rusty, Mark Jackson, we've had a couple round tables, but mostly asking how his faith impacts his decisions, so to speak. Like after they beat Miami, he made this kind of like out of nowhere gesture about, how that was a product of his faith, and he credited that win to God. And actually it was Rusty who asked him, what made you do that? Because he kind of avoids it a lot, so as not to be pegged as the over preacher type. But we don't really. First off, our access is just not that great, and you got 5 minutes. There's not that much time to just ask about Leviticus, but it comes up here and there, but mostly as okay, Sunday you're not practicing, are you gonna preach, or stuff like that, very minute stuff. We have yet to have the deep, prophetic biblical discussion that probably everybody expects them to have, and I don't think that's gonna happen.
Hey, Marcus, how you doing? So one of the religious idols for a long time in Bay Area basketball was Monte Ellis. Now that he's gone and you've had, half season or so, 50 games to get to know the Warriors without him, has your opinion of his game and his impact on the franchise changed at all?
Not really. I mean, that's the bottom line.
So what was it, and why hasn't it changed?
Who can play basketball? He just needs to be in a situation that's conducive to his game. You know, he needs to have his inefficiency covered. He needs to be next to someone who kind of like is clearly the better player, I think. You know, when Monte Ellis is your best player on the team, it's not best for him. He takes too many shots. He forces too much. Monte was at his best when he was next to Barron, when he was playing with Steven Jackson, and he was coming off the bench. Not that he should come off the bench, but, you know, you put him next to a guy like Derrick Rose, where there's no conversation about who's better. I think you get the best of Monte Ellis because he's just more efficient. His effort is more centralized when he's not having to carry an entire team. And he's been doing that for so long. I'm not quite sure he knows how to play that way anymore, but it'd be interesting to see. I don't think he's terrible. I think he was a bad fit for what the Warriors were doing and where they were going. I just don't think that small guard stuff works.
You were acting very jaded. I've covered Ellis up and down, and I know all about it. And so was Jeff Lepper when you guys were alerted to his video with the Bucks a couple days ago, talking about how he's favorably comparable to Dwayne Wade. So I'm just wondering if you could perhaps expound on what your reaction was after you actually saw the video, which in my humble opinion was pretty hilarious.
It was great. It was funny. It was so funny. I had to send it out to some people, just in pure awe. It was the way his eyes looked. I think you pointed that out to me, Ethan. It was the way he like kind of stared at the end, like it was like his way of like dropping the mic and saying "sexual chocolate" and walking off. You know, it was like Monte Ellis have it all. And to me, that was the most gangster part. That he was just like, "What and what? Any more questions?" You know, I thought it was great. And it doesn't even matter that he actually may have some kind of argument in there that if you actually analyze it and break it down, you may be able to make, forget all that. It was just how gangster he was when he said it. That really was just hilarious to me, like with conviction and grammatical unprecision.
He also said the way he said his name was like you finally heard it the way it was meant to be said. Like you always say like Monte Ellis. He's like Montellis. And you're like, oh, that's his name.
It's the big reveal.
Have it all.
I loved it, man.
That was great.
I wanted to just break it down and write about the various elements, the way that a championship is just, it's just that. Just, 2 championships in some games. The utter lack of irony. That's all it is. But transitioning to Warriors who are actually playing, and how odd is this for you? What does this feel like, Marcus? Because you covered this team when it's been competing for nothing, and suddenly you're following it and you're covering it, and games are being won, and excitement is building. And does this change at all how you feel about your job and how you go about it?
I wouldn't say it's changed how I feel about my job because, where I'm from, this job is great. Whether they're losing or winning, this is a very exclusive kind of position to be in. So I don't care if they were old and forever. The fact that I get to do what I do is going to always be great to me. And I have no shortage of people to remind me how great it is. But it is odd in a sense that you keep waiting for something to happen. And it's not happening. You keep waiting for that losing streak. I mean, even when Brandon Rush went down, that was like here we go. This is how the Warriors roll. Then the whole 7 to 10 day stuff with Bogut. Like, all right, here's the Warrior. You just keep waiting for something to kind of knock them off the tracks. But it seems like that type of stuff gets them on the track. That's what's kind of weird is now I watch games and you see a team coming back in the third quarter, and you're like, all right, well, so they're going to win it. The question is how. Where before it was, here comes the fourth quarter, the Warriors are going to lose it. So it's kind of weird that way in that I can't go to the Rolodex of stories, that I've developed over the years about Warriors losses. I can't go back and say, this is like that Houston game. Now I'm like this is all fresh material for me. This is like live. Live Marcus Thompson writing about something that I've never seen before. kind of like going to the Grand Canyon for the first time in Reckon. You know, it's just new.
Yeah, they so I was looking it up. If the Warriors win 50 games this year, right now they're on pace to win 55. It'd be the first 50-win season since 93-94, which means there are adults, legal adults who have never seen the Warriors win 50 games. What is the difference between how the city and the community feels about this team versus the We Believe Warriors? Like, obviously that was going to probably be more passionate, but like, are they? You feel like they're different kinds of people who are glomming onto the team this year?
Oh yeah, you get all them San Francisco Giants front runner types. That's what you get. You know, that We Believe thing was kind of like, you know, cheering on a struggling hero. You know, like Rocky's down and you need to give them a little something to boost them up. This is more like what? We're good now. Like, what? You really can't see us. You know, it's kind of a different vibe. And the crazy part is we haven't really seen what it's going to be like if we get to March. And now we're talking about the difference between a 4 and a 5 seed, maybe a 3. Like, if they keep this going and Bowie, it's going to be crazy. Just because these are fans who, you know, they're nut jobs alone. Now imagine being a nut job for a winning team. You're kind of getting that feeling like something's bubbling, but everybody's a little too cautious to start going nuts yet. You know, so when we get to March, we'll see, you know, people start going crazy. Right now, it's like, I don't know. I've had my heart broken too many times. I know this girl is hot, but something's wrong with her. She's crazy.
Yeah, people are saying now it's We Belong instead of We Believe, and I feel like there should be a question mark at the end. It should be like We Belong? It should be like that, because I don't think people actually seriously feel it in their bones. They don't actually feel like they belong. One thing I want to ask is, it would seem that David Lee is the best player on the team, and of a team that doesn't suck. And I'm wondering, A, would you agree with that sentiment? And B, is it kind of awkward to have him be your superstar? To have, like, because Warriors fans really hated him before, I think, or at least a lot of them did. And like, how do you perceive that dynamic?
I mean, I think the way you just asked that kind of tells it all. You know, there was so much hesitation, and I feel just like you. You know, like David Lee's the best player on his team. I would say the opposing team does not yet look at David Lee as the best player, so I don't call him the best player. I think who the other team game plans for is kind of the best indication of who the best player is, because they know more about basketball, all the research. And night after night, you see other teams say, we need to take away Steph Curry. You still see them go one-on-one with David Lee. And I think that's to their own peril, because I think they feel like in the past, yeah, you could let David Lee get 20 and 10 and you're still going to win. I just think it's different now because he has a little different zeal about him, you know, especially late in the games. But I still think the catalyst is Curry. I still think he's the one who makes the defense adjust. He's the one who makes the coach nervous at night. You know, I think he's the guy that kind of drives all this. So even if he's not having a good game, the fact that they are so geared to stop him opens up stuff for everyone else. I think that's probably going to change because David Lee's 20 and 10 is different. It's not the same first 3 quarters 20 and 10. This is a 16 and 8, and then in the fourth quarter I'm going to get you 6 more key points and some key rebounds. You know, it's a little bit different 20 and 10 now. I think we're probably going to see that change, but it still looks to me like when you go into a game and you hear the coaches talk and you hear the players talk, the first thing they say is, you know, Steph Curry. I mean, Spoelstra basically, you know, gave him the Jordan treatment. He was like, look, we got to stop Steph Curry, and we're going to do everything we can to stop him. To me, that carries more weight than who has the best numbers. But it's odd in the sense that David Lee is really like a productive, winning player now. And I don't care what anybody say. I don't care how much Mark Jackson says, oh, it's the same David Lee. This is not the same David Lee. This dude battles on defense He even contests some shots here and there. That's something he never did. He would just like fake and then not do it. Now he'll actually go up. He draws fouls. He like leans into people. That's something he never did before. This is a different David Lee. After a while, teams are gonna have to start like covering this dude like he's a different David Lee.
It's you're sounding a bit choppy, but I can decipher most of what you're saying. I thought it was a really good point about Curry because we heard from Tom Haberstroh that Spoelstra was just terrified of Steph Curry as well, and I think it's between him and Lee, it's really close right now. So I think that might be true. I don't know if that question's settled yet. The whole Curry versus Lee situation. We do have to say goodbye because our time limit is coming up. And thanks so much for coming on, Marcus. And we should have you on in the future. And we should. I want you to commit right now. I want you to commit when the Warriors are in the finals this season. You're not gonna big time us. You're gonna come back and appear on the video cast when they're playing the Heat in the finals.
If the Warriors in the finals, I'll come on, but it has to be after I run butt naked on the Nimitz.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks, Marcus.
Not gonna happen.
I don't know. We belong. Thanks for coming on, Marcus, and have a great rest of the day. And I'll see you probably tomorrow.
That's the first guest who's just gotten up at the end of the interview. I kind of like that move.
Yeah, I like it too. It provides a natural segue from the interview, and I would love to have Marcus on in the future. Hopefully with less pixelation and choppiness. At least for some reason, I felt like I understood everything he said, even though I heard half of it. Did you get that same sense?
Yeah, no, I picked it up. I mean, I think we're also kind of basically on the same page with him and most of these issues. Yeah, that was an awesome appearance. Let's talk about things that we're looking forward to now in 2013. I'll start with one that we both are really excited about, which is the Western Conference playoffs this year are going to be incredible. I mean, like we say that kind of every year, but I really think this year is different because so many of the teams that are in like the 6 to 8 range aren't just good teams or like interesting young teams, but they're like very fascinating teams. Like Houston, the fact that they just like drop 125, you never know, or 130, and then they'll get scored on too. I mean, it seems like every team, especially if Utah doesn't make it, is made for like a super exciting style of play.
Yes, and Houston, I swear, this is not, I have not looked it up, but every time I look at their box score, it's either 120 to 90 and they've won, or 120 to 90 and they've lost, yes. Seemingly. Every game feels like that for them. Floating this out there, I would love to see a Timberwolves versus Oklahoma City Thunder playoff matchup if the Wolves are healthy, and that is a big if. That if is bigger and just beastlier than Pekovic right now because they're injured all the time. But in many ways, strategically, it seems like they might not be a team the Thunder want to face, even if they have a lack of experience, and even if gun to my head, I would pick the Thunder to win that series. That would be an incredible matchup.
Yeah, and also Rockets Spurs with just like spread pick and roll, back and forth, super high pace, I think would be a fascinating series. Speaking of the Timberwolves, one of my things that I'm looking forward to this year that I think is going to happen is the wild swing back on people's rating of Kevin Love. This year in NBA, he was 7th. Think about that. He was 7th, ahead of, I got the poster right here, he somehow was ahead of Darren Williams. I mean, he's going to climb. But they had him ahead of guys like Melo, Parker, Bosch. There's just tons of them. And I think he's going way back the other direction. Partly due to injury, and it's not fair, but also partly because the Wolves have been so good without him. And like you see that the defense is better, the ball movement is better, and he's kind of like messed things up a little bit since he's been back. So it'll be interesting to see if he's still held in the same regard or if that empty stats argument actually comes out and gets him.
Well, he looks like he has, and not that I'm any paragon of working out and keeping healthy, but he looks like he has a bit of a Louis C.K. / Will Ferrell body upon his return from injury. And it might be an optical illusion because his arms just look off. His arms look flabbier than in the past. And he's been shooting, a lot of his misses aren't in and out shots. They're just broke. His jumper is just like broke on occasion. So I look forward to that. The other swing that I look forward to is the wild swing on how Rondo is considered, because I feel like this happens every year now where mid-season people get down on Rondo and Rondo needs to be traded. And then when the Celtics awake from their slumber, it swings in the other direction. Rondo is playing better than he played last regular season. The Celtics just are being terrible on defense or being worse than they usually are. And it's funny how so much of how the Celtics play on defense influences how people feel about Rondo on offense.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think the Celtics, man, if the Celtics get like pounded in the first, they're like the 6th seed and they just get smashed by the Hawks or something, I think it would be really. I'm also interested to see what moves they make, because obviously they're going to make a trade when Bradley's healthy, so that'll be interesting. And then also the continuing of one of the great storylines that was kind of like, I think will continue to be something more and more interesting for the nerd set of the NBA is Harden versus Westbrook as just like a topic. I think it's still like their PERs are bare. Like Harden's is barely better. He's shooting better. Westbrook is having a great year in assists and rebounds. He's defending a little better than he has in the past. Like it's just cool to see. You know, one of the things we talked about when this trade happened was that this is going to be a conversation for a long time. It's not a no-brainer who is better now, and that's been borne out. And I think they could, you know, if the Rockets can hang around, it could end up being a really fun kind of mini rivalry where obviously the Thunder are going to be better, but it would still kind of be a referendum each time they play. The way that when LeBron and Durant play each other, it's like every time. You know, it almost seems like who's better could hinge on who wins that game.
Yeah, and I love the Westbrook conversation. I never want it to end. I don't mind it. I feel like there are irrational people on both sides, and those are the most fun kinds of conversations, unless we're talking about something important. Because I think we're on the same level when it comes to this, which is that it's unfair to say Westbrook will never win a championship, you'll never win with him, and to judge him based on how he's not a quote-unquote true point guard, that's a stupid way to judge him. And we agree that he is, on the aggregate, a good player and a help. But the other side of it is also dumb. The side of you just have to let it be, the hippie side of you just have to let Westbrook be Westbrook, man. You just got to take the good with the bad. It's about him harnessing his aggression, you know, and you can't really tread on that. I'm not with that either. No, he needs to stop taking pull-up three-pointers with 20 seconds on the shot clock. That should just be eliminated. That's wasted points and wasted possessions. There's no reason to do that.
Right. Yeah, it's not, and that's the thing. It's not like that's the exact same thing as when he plays well. Like you can be aggressive and smart. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. Like you can be aggressive without taking bad shots. Obviously that has happened. All right, we're running a little bit long because we just had such a festive little show here. But I do want to do Dagger Smash noted. Do you have a dagger?
I do. I have a dagger to the, and I was complaining about it as I sometimes do on Twitter. I have a football dagger, which is that Adrian Peterson, amazing season. A great season. I really enjoyed the season. And I can do this because Zach's not going to scream at me from his Minnesota lair about it. But I think that the idea that he's the MVP of football to be flawed if you're making a value argument about it. I think that it's perfectly cool to have that guy be MVP, but then you have to acknowledge that you're saying it's relative to people in his position, or it was just awesome and it was fun to watch him play. Because if you're saying stuff like, where would they be without him? That team would stink without him. He means more to his team. Like, no, that's not true. Football's different now. The quarterback matters a whole lot more than the running back. I believe Minnesota has worse than the 15th offense, that is never going to happen if you have an elite quarterback. That is never going to happen in football. So football's in this funny position where they have to decide an MVP, but one position it just has a far greater impact than the other. So you almost wonder why anybody else is up for the award. So I find that tension to be interesting somewhat. And also it's all ironically derived from my own love of LaDainian Tomlinson and feeling threatened that people are calling somebody else the greatest ever, which I also find to be BS. But I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, he doesn't catch out of the backfield, but yeah, it's like if a pitcher threw every day, like every MVP would be a pitcher. Because they dominate half of the game. My smash is less profound, but I watched the Nets 5-minute third quarter yesterday, or I didn't actually. I woke up and watched it. It was like the first thing I did in 2013 was watch the Nets score 5 points in the third quarter. It was hilarious, as you might imagine. Two of my favorite moments. So one is Reggie Evans loses a jump ball to Tony Parker, which
That's
to
wonderful.
start off, like Evans is 9 inches taller, but also Parker isn't like a jumper. It's not like losing to Eric Bledsoe. He doesn't have like super long arms. Anyway, he loses it easily to him. And then there's a sequence when on back-to-back possessions, it's all jump shots and like missed layups. Evans shoots it. It hits the rim. It's like a 12-foot shot. Like, it's not even a far shot. It hits the rim so hard it flies over the backboard. Next possession, Darren Williams takes a fadeaway from the baseline and shoots it almost off the back of the backboard. It's such a bad shot. The Nets are terrible, and they're only going to beat bad teams. And it's kind of, I think, like at this point we know the Nets play a good team. They're going to get beat. If they play a bad team, they're probably going to overwhelm them with size and just kind of knowing stuff.
Is it culturally insensitive that I picture Tony Parker winning that jump ball with a baguette? Like he just had a baguette, and that allowed him to tip the ball to his own team.
In the stomach and then jumps up. He's got like some little trick. Steps on his foot.
Some little trick. I just like the idea of players who aren't born in America to be able to use something of their country's origin to help them win jump balls. It would be a totally stupid rule change, but one I would be in favor of.
All right, Peep and James, what's your noted?
My noted is on another terrible team, or maybe not terrible, but they're playing terribly right now. The Mavs have lost 6 in a row, and it just sounds like they're miserable over there. 3 quotes from last night's loss against the Spurs. One was Rick Carlisle saying he might get inventive with the way he gets his message across. He might start suspending guys who aren't listening to him in practice. The second was Sean Marion, who said this expletive sucks. And the third was Manu Ginobili, who noted that the Mavs just didn't look inspired out there. And everything's kind of rough. Like, O.J. Mayo is not dealing with all the pressure that opposing teams are giving him now. Dirk Nowitzki is working his way back, but he just doesn't look like himself yet. And it's bad times in Dallas. Bad times.
It is. Dirk is one of those players when he doesn't have it, he looks awful. Like, all that kind of endearing, herky-jerky, like elbows all over the place stuff. It just makes him look like really unathletic when in the end that high arcing shot doesn't go in.
Yeah, it was the same thing like the beginning of last season when he had he didn't take any, he didn't do any basketball during the lockout at all, so he wasn't ready, and he just looked awful for a while, and I don't know how long it's going to take him now to get back into it.
I think it's funny. Sorry, just quick. Funny thing to look forward to is how haunted the Mavericks will be by that Tyson Chandler decision for years and years and years.
Yeah, no, I think that is going to be one of the... I think it'll be... Right, I don't think people are really going to talk about it long term unless the Knicks win a championship somehow, because then it'll be really obvious. But it will be sort of, bye James, subtly one of the big mistakes that, when Bill Simmons writes his next book of basketball, will get its own chapter. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. Here's wishing you a happy and healthy 2013, and same to the NBA. No more hurt good players, and we'll see you on Thursday with the one and only Curtis Harris of pro basketball history, and we can ask him why he cares about players who played in the 1940s. Something I'm really looking forward to.
I look forward to his 5 minutes on Bob Pettit. Sorry, stepping on your outro. Thanks everybody. Have a great new year.
I taught my bird to to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.